What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Cross Guild Chronicles. I'm your host, Doug. That's my guy, Shady. Shady, tough day overall. If you want to get into it a little bit on here, we can. We're not gonna, we're not gonna rub it in. We're not gonna do anything crazy. The Chargers took one on the shins today. How you feeling?
Yeah, man, that was tough. That was tough. It was belt to ass from the second quarter on. Not our day. Yeah, I don't need to get into many details about that, but losing the playoffs always sucks, no matter what sport.
Definitely.
So at least you're in a good spot with your Ohio State Buckeyes right now, playing for the national championship.
That felt really good.
Just playing good football at the right time.
Yep. No, and we'll just leave it at that. Shady, we got a big topic today. We're going to talk the Egghead Arc. There is a lot of layers inside the Egghead Arc. There's a lot of directions that happen in the Egghead Arc. A very popular arc based on everything, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. People really enjoyed Egghead from top to bottom. I know you did. You took a little hiatus there and you kind of started coming back. So overall thoughts on Egghead before we really get into some of the meat and potatoes of the arc.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what was appealing about Egghead to me was it was just a good changeup. Everything before had been the culmination of, the Wano, Hokage Island, that Yonko saga plotline. So it was nice to just kind of get into, obviously it's still there's the overarching plot points of One Piece that we're kind of in there, but it's the reset, right? This is the reset. This is the first arc that goes into the final saga. So there was some freshness and uniqueness to it and some, unexpectedness to it that I thought was really appealing.
Yeah, and that kind of takes us off. We've heard the name Vegapunk from different parts of One Piece, and now we finally get to the point where we're meeting Vegapunk at Egghead. Those Straw Hats. To me, I just always love seeing the crew together, and we get some a couple chapters, panels of seeing everybody back together, and that stuff's always fun for me. I've always enjoyed having the crew as the crew, so that was great. But then we finally get to meet Vegapunk. Thoughts on Vegapunk? The design I thought was pretty classic. The Einstein look with the massively grown brain. It all fit for me. What were your thoughts initially after meeting Vegapunk? And then what were your thoughts on Vegapunk, splitting his self into the six different versions?
Yeah, it was interesting, because this has been a character who's been built up for so long, but we obviously didn't know that Egghead arc really existed, right? We just kind of go from Wano, where, have some transition chapters where we hear about the news, and then all of a sudden, oh crap, we're here with Vegapunk. Like, this is the reveal we've been waiting for. And it was cool, man. We got to see just the technological aspect of really cool. The Mother Flame, him splitting himself into six, like you said, for efficiency purposes, how he was just connected to O'Hara and some of the other characters that maybe we didn't expect him to be connected to. That was cool. Yeah. So I think Vegapunk overall was just a really cool reveal.
Yeah, and I thought, I kind of like the fact that leading up to Vegapunk, there was kind of a dark tone to him, because obviously Vegapunk has done some things that, really, were kind of harsh on the world. But then when you meet him, everything he's done is in the idea of propelling and improving. So I thought that was an interesting, because the tone was always kind of a little bit darker. He's got, he's worked with Caesar and all, like bad people. Yeah, but at the same time, there's some, there's a lot of more, he's more of a, okay, I'm kind of trying to advance things further. It's not necessarily out of malicious intent type thing. So I did kind of like that about Vegapunk. I liked, his six different, the six different kind of personalities inside of him. I thought were well done. And, we finally get to really meet Bonnie in these. We've seen her a couple times with the Worst Generation. We get to see a little bit more of Bonnie. I know we can kind of, Bonnie and Kuma's story and everything that they had to go through, dating back to when Vegapunk met Kuma. I know that at the end, it kind of, it's too feel good for me, probably the way that it went with Bonnie and them. Overall thoughts on their story, because it was an emotional story, and I thought it was really well done until the fact that, I probably would have liked to see Kuma pass away and maybe Bonnie live on, in his honor type thing. But what were your final thoughts? Because that was a big part of the story in the background with Vegapunk.
Yeah, man. I mean, like you said, even with Vegapunk 2, this arc is about dreams. It's about, ambition and free will, right? Breaking free of that control. And that's exactly what Kuma did. I think that he had one of the most unique backstories, one of the most, feel good ones, like you said as well. But he's just the ultimate representation of free will. It was just so much better than Kaido's backstory, man. Like, we got back to Oda's bag when it comes to backstories and having actual depth behind it, right? I feel like, we'll have a Wano episode one day, but I feel like Kaido's backstory lacked that depth that we were looking for that he usually delivers on. And, Kuma he almost feels like a Christ-like character, right? Like that's what he's supposed to represent with the religious symbolism.
Yeah, he's a sacrifice, yeah.
He's always taking on the pain of others. And in retrospect, it makes the moment with Zoro look even better because it makes sense how Kuma would honor that so much, right? How somebody would be willing to self-sacrifice themselves. So when you find out everything about Kuma's devil fruit and his whole backstory, looking back on that moment in the pain and thrill of arc, you're like, wow, this hits even more.
Yep. No, that's well said. In one of my favorite panels of the arc, as we talk about it, that punch that he put on Saturn was so fulfilling. Ooh. Like the years and years of the slavery, everything Kuma's gone through, all the technological changes, trying to take away his will, like you mentioned, all built up into that massive punch that he put on Saturn. That was one of the more fulfilling punches I can recall in the series. I know there's been some really good ones, but that was like, man, that's a lot of pent up energy from, for so long. And, Saturn is, he's the main antagonist of this arc.
Yeah.
I thought they did a good job with Saturn. He was extremely unlikable. And I thought, that was well done. How did you feel about Saturn as an antagonist overall for the arc?
Yeah, it was really good. Obviously, the Celestial Dragons and then the Gorosei are the top of those Celestial Dragons, so they're supposed to represent the main obstacle of tyranny and oppression that they have caused on the One Piece world. And you could tell he's just a heartless bastard. Like the entire arc has other antagonists, but they're all going through character conflicts, right? Like Kizaru, Sentomaru, even CP0 with Kaku and Stussy, they have character conflicts. Have to do with love of others, right? They're conflicted, but
sure.
Saturn is just supposed to represent that ultimate tyranny. Like I said, I think he served the purpose well, for sure. That's kind of like an introductory into the Gorosei, right?
Definitely, and I thought that was a good place to start because, it's and then we as we go on, we'll talk about it here. Kizaru, another important part of the entire arc. You get to see a little bit of how, his background with Vegapunk and all the stuff they've gone through together. And I thought, one of the stronger panels, and we used it for our background, was that conversation he had with Akainu of, he cusses him out and everything. And you could see the emotion. You could see how much Vegapunk means to Kizaru. And I thought all that was really good. It's nice sometimes when you can humanize your antagonists, your villains to another level, and that was really well done in this arc. I felt like with Kizaru, that connection made you care more for Kizaru also, in my opinion. I think going forward, he's somebody that you want to see what happens next with him.
100%. Did you expect to get, like, before this arc, did you expect to get any sort of character like exposition on Kizaru, or did you think he would just kind of be a guy? Because I think that's part of the reason I liked it so much, was because I wasn't really expecting this out of Kizaru.
So remember when back on Sabayoti, when he comes up, I just never felt like he was malicious about like the way. Yeah, he kicked the shit out of the worst generation, but it never felt like he was like, just out there ruthlessly slaughtering them like he probably could have.
He does the bare minimum. That's part of his character,
and,
right?
Obviously. And so to me, I always thought there's probably more to him, but I didn't think we'd get to the level that we got. So I like that you brought that up, but I just never felt maybe that we get this deep. And I'm so glad we did, because we definitely got to see a different side of, that character. And it was really good. I was really, really well done by Oda in that regard.
He dropped some hard lines too. I really like the line where he's like, "I'm just a cog in the machine," because he was like, I just do my job. I'm out here. He said, like, have you ever had to kill your best friend? It's like, damn,
Right.
good stuff.
Yeah, no, he was extremely well done. I'm really glad we got that. Let's touch on it since we're here.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought it was nice that we got to see him and Luffy clash,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea that that Luffy beat him, vice versa, as soon as we found out that Kizaru was giving him food and stuff, that's your answer right there. And there's your answer.
It is your answer. And it's an interesting fight because a lot of it was off screen, right? And that's where the Gear Fifth being drained comes into play.
Yeah.
Is that like a lot of it was off screen. Kizaru wasn't really taking the offensive. Obviously, we didn't see Luffy use his best attacks, but at the end of the day, Kizaru, was clearly wavering. And in One Piece, that's been emphasized, multiple times, right? Is like, if you don't have your heart in it, like you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. The internal struggle that he's going through was a lot bigger of an obstacle for him at the time than Luffy. And again, we saw what Luffy could do when it's life or death, like he was against Kaido. Mm-hmm. We didn't get to that level, and Kizaru didn't feel like he needed to go to that level either, because he was there to complete a mission. He had to kill his best friend. So while I did enjoy different aspects of the fight, Sanji blocking the laser or the light beam, I thought all that was really cool, but it wasn't ever really, like I said, the main antagonist was Saturn. The fights were really directed at how do we beat this guy who has regeneration, who has all these extra hacks that, Kizaru is dealing with his own thing here. People are going to obviously take that a different way. They're going to make it out more than it was needed to be. I thought it was fine the way it was. Luffy getting to flex a little bit here and there is fine, because it never was taken to that life or death situation.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that Kizaru was never supposed to be, at least for Luffy, never supposed to be somebody that he has to like actually defeat in combat, right?
It wasn't a real obstacle. It was just Saturn, like we said. I think my favorite part of the Egghead Arc in terms of the combat, it had to be Zoro flambeing Lucci. That was that was fantastic, because there was a part in that fight where Oda kind of left it open, and the dialogue, because obviously people read different versions. Sometimes you get the early guys who read the very early translation, and then you get a different translation a little bit later. There was Oda kind of worded it, or the translation was kind of weird. Zoro left it like kind of open. He's like, I could fit, or we could finish this whenever, but yada yada. It was some weird, but then finally Zoro puts his foot down and finishes that fight, and you're like, okay, that's the end of that. We know for sure. And I love the fact that Jinbei comes by and he's like, Jinbei, he's still standing. He's like, Zoro, you've handled this, and he hits him with the brick. He hits him with the brick fists, and they're out of there. I thought I love to see Zoro flex and be like, hey, I'm way above Lucci at this point. I thought that was the best violence we got to see.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It almost felt like Oda was just kind of using it as a stalling tactic, right? Because this arc wasn't really about the Straw Hats. Like, obviously they were there, they're together, they're always going to be main characters, but this arc was about the side characters. Those were the characters that had like the character conflicts. The Straw Hats didn't get their 1v1s. Like, sure, Luffy fought Kizaru, but that was an ambiguous fight that, it's a draw. That's what it is. I think Kizaru got the better of him because of the information, but it's a draw, right? Zoro beat Lucci. That was pretty self-explanatory.
Clearly.
Like, I don't get how people are doubting that. Like, sure, there's the huffing and puffing, but that's literally in every fight. You could go back to any fight against randoms and you'll see characters huffing and puffing and stuff. It's not really that big of a deal.
No, I'm totally with you. It was definitive. One thing I do want to circle back to that happened at the beginning of the arc, and I thought, just because it's good relief from sometimes of the story. I thought the stuff with Buggy, Crocodile, and Mihawk, I like that there's that Buggy gets to be there for two serious characters to pick on, and there's some comic relief there. And we've talked quite a bit about the Cross Guild. We're named after them. I like some of that stuff. We've kind of talked about them before, so I just wanted to circle back and say I did enjoy the comedy at the beginning there. These two high level pirates, and they're under Buggy's shield. It's just funny to me.
100%.
Let's talk about the Seraphim, because going forward, potentially a massive problem going forward. The level that they're at, I didn't Luffy say hitting one was like hitting Kaido or something along that line. What are your thoughts going forward on the Seraphim? Because, that's an issue. Now that they've replaced the warlords, these are the strongest, of that ilk now. What are your thoughts on the Seraphim?
Yeah, man. Obviously, they're supposed to replace the warlords, and they literally did just that. Like with their DNA, they're adopting their personalities too, and it fits with the themes of the arc, like we said about free will and being controlled. Like there's a bunch of robots on this island. There's a bunch of rebelling creatures on this island, and that's includes Sentomaru, Stussy, and that even kind of was going on for the Seraphim as well. Like you saw S Snake, right? Her human characteristics, like Boa Hancock, made her kind of like betray them because she wouldn't hurt Luffy, right? Didn't that happen? It's like, it's interesting stuff, man. Like you can't take away the deeper motivations of the human spirit. Like you just can't.
No, and that's perfectly summed up. And yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because you get to see, kind of where they're at. But in terms of power, and I hope we get to see a little bit more about the green blood and, kind of what else can go on with the green blood, because there seemed to be a big importance on the green blood. Do you have any theories or anything about, what else we could do with that, or what else it could, potentially lead to?
Not really off the top of my head, honestly. Like it was cool learning about that. Like just in general, this arc did a good job of like talking about energy sources, and that's even kind of Vegapunk's dream, right? Is to give energy to the entire world, to have like maybe not unlimited resources, but like have everybody have access to like the important stuff in that regard. And then with the Iron Giant too and everything.
Yeah, no, that's sure. Quick touch on, how about Shanks? Just no time for kids bullshit. I mean,
that is the song technically, yeah.
I mean, technically, I think it's worth bringing up. The way they just dismantled Kid again was just impressive. And then Dory and Bragi, hitting them with the double attack to destroy the ship. Do you think we get to see Kid more? Do you think he'll come back around?
I do. I think that I just don't see how this can be the end without some sort of real, like, actual character reflection or character arc.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's meant to be kind of like a Luffy without the Shanks role model in a way.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like how I feel he is. And it's funny because there are even two red hair characters who have one arm, like both of them are. So it makes sense that Kid and Shanks would be the one who's scrap in that regard. But I just feel like Kid needs to, reflect as a pirate, maybe learn something about the ideology of Luffy and Shanks. And that's how he can maybe, I don't know, be successful or something.
It's just, now that they've done this twice, and we've, we know that he ran into the red hair pirates earlier, and that's where, other things happened. It just, Oda's created such a large gap between them that it doesn't feel like it's going to ever be able to be made up. So I don't know, there could be a clash between Shanks and Kid directly, but it just feels like it's already been established to such an extreme that there's just no way Kid could ever reach him almost. So to me, it feels like, how do you make up such a gap?
Yeah. And that doesn't, what I said doesn't necessarily mean that Shanks is going to or Kid's going to get a rematch against him or anything. Okay. I just feel like he has to have some sort of character reflection where like he actually understands the ideology behind what it means to be strong, because that's kind of the whole thing with, Shanks and Luffy is like Shanks is a pacifist, right? Luffy kind of doesn't adopt that fully, but he adopts part of his ideology, right? Like when someone punches him at the bar, he's just going to laugh it off. He doesn't fight unless his friends are in danger, right? Yeah. So I don't know, maybe some sort of character growth for Kid in that regard. Just something. I'd like to see something. I don't want him to just be sinking in the bottom of the ocean and that be the end of his character.
No, that's fair. That's a good point. Nope. And then we keep it going. We get to see Blackbeard attack Law and his crew. Blackbeard shows up very prepared to take on Law, brings 4 or 5 of his commanders. It was, I thought it was, cool to see Law, try to bang with him, but it was just an overwhelming odds. Do you see Law getting back into the picture? Do you see him, regrouping his crew? Do you see him becoming a straw hat? One of his commanders. Do you see? Where do you see Law going in the future here?
Yeah, I hope so, because I feel like he's earned the right to learn about the will of D, which is kind of like his new ambition after Doflamingo. So I for sure think he'll be back. How at this point, I'm not sure, like what's going on with him. Obviously, I think the last time we saw him wasn't Beppo running away, right?
Yeah, he had taken the rumble balls from Chopper and with Sulong, and that was how they were able to escape.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was a decent performance against Blackbeard. It's a different type of fight than the Shanks and Kid, because the Shanks one was like Shanks using the future and attacking Kid to protect the crew, right? Blackbeard was like, I'm showing up. Like, yeah, he had his guys, but he doesn't really have a plan. That's exactly what Von Auger says, like jumping in without a plan, like usual, right? And, Law, being the tactician that he was, did a good job with the K room there to knock him off. What's the horse's name again that he's flying on?
Oh, gosh. Not Whiskey. I can't think of it, but I know what you're talking about.
You know the scene I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And, so it's a cool inverse to see the Shanks and Kid fight and the Law and Blackbeard fight. But ultimately, obviously, Law's not going to be able to overcome the Yami Yami no Mi. That's just a little too much, especially for a Devil Fruit reliant user like Law.
Definitely. Nope. And that was, I enjoyed that stuff. So, as a Law fan, I would like to see him somehow get back with the Straw Hats and be a big assistance to them going forward. And then we go back to Egghead. We get to see the Gorosei come to Egghead, and we get to see how they teleport. However,
whatever, right?
dark hole. Some kind of mystical way to get back there. We get to see all of their mythical forms. We'll call them mythical because we don't really necessarily know if they're given to them by Emu, how it works. But initial thoughts on seeing the 5 of them in their form, and what were your thoughts now that we get to actually see them in action?
Yeah, that was a crazy moment. Obviously, nobody could have really predicted dark summoning circles like that and all 5 of them pulling up at the same time. I mean, I did think it's interesting how Shanks' brother seems to have come to Elbaf in sort of a similar way. So that kind of ties into your question, right? It's like, how can they do this? Is it Emu? Do they have to? I don't know. What's the criteria for being able to use that? Is it just being a Holy Knight or Gorosei member or something? I don't know, man. Like it's interesting.
It is very interesting, and then we get these cool monstrous beings. Quick shout out to Sabo, who somehow found a way to escape these creatures. His status continues to rise. We'll circle back here. At the beginning of the arc, the island is destroyed. Now, are you certain that's a weapon? I'm drawing a blank. Pluton.
Uranus.
Ancient weapon. Sorry, ancient weapon. Are we certain that's what took out that island?
It seems pretty clear that it's that they have Uranus or something, because obviously York sold out the Mother Flame to them, so they're able to power it now, and that's presumably how they're able to do it. Obviously, it's not like 100% confirmed, but that seems pretty clear to me. That's what's happening right now.
And I really like the way that they flexed that. That was such a cool way to show just the power of the ancient weapons. As we're going, the Buccaneer background, I thought that was all pretty cool, tying back to Kuma, them believing in Nika and all that kind of stuff. The way it all ties back into, Bonnie being with Luffy, Kuma finally gets to meet the Liberator, all that kind of stuff. I thought that, getting to see that kind of come a little, almost full circle for Kuma was really cool. Out of the 5 Gorosei, well, now, before obviously Figureland steps in, did you have one that you really liked design wise or character wise?
Yeah, I always like Venus, honestly, just because he's the swordsman, so that kind of gives me cool vibes off the bat. But when I saw his design, once he transformed, that just solidified it even further. Like I think it was the coolest one. Do you agree?
I agree. The horse Like they, yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
with you. I thought that was the best designed one, and I'm with you on that. I thought it was really cool. I thought that was the best done one for sure.
Mhm.
Um, I liked his and Zoro getting to scrap a little bit. Obviously, it
Yeah.
wasn't anything wild, but getting to see them kind of go at it was cool.
Yeah, and they acknowledged the Katetsu. That was really
Exactly, the
interesting.
connection there, that was great. I'm glad that was good information that we definitely needed. Um, Let me ask you about Bonnie's power, her devil
Mhm.
fruit. Did you think it got a little too far with her kind of being able to mimic Gear 5, or do you think that was, how did you feel about that? Because in the moment, I'm like, oh shit, this is kind of cool
Mhm.
that she can do this. But at the same time, I was like, damn, she can mimic some Gear 5 stuff. So, to
Yeah, I
me,
mean,
there's like a give and take type almost with the way I felt about it. How
mhm.
did you feel about her abilities?
I think it's symbolically cool and what it represents with the arc and the whole freedom thing, the ideology, all the Nika stuff. I'm not saying that part doesn't make sense, but I guess technically I could see what you're saying with it going a little too far, right? Like in the way her power works, it's like she just like imagines a greater future now, and that's like now like how powerful is she? How
Yep.
much of the ability is she actually replicating? I think that is it might be a little too much, honestly, but I think Oda probably cares more about just like the symbolism behind everything.
She became the hero that Kuma needed,
Yeah,
and
right.
that kind of, and again, story wise, everything. I just thought, you know, first time seeing it and being able to replicate parts of it, it just seems like it's a lot to ask when all we've ever seen her do is get younger, older.
Yeah,
Think
right.
it just was like
Mhm.
it's a big step forward. And then, uh, let me ask you this, and this is obviously a different kind of topic, and we've talked about this a little bit because we have certain expectations for the Straw Hats.
Mhm.
Oda had a fantastic opportunity to confirm Frankie could have hockey, and he didn't do it. He
Yeah,
showed Bonnie had hockey, he showed Sanji, who we've known has hockey. Why couldn't he just give Frankie hockey and boost another one of the Straw Hats? That would have been a simple way to do it.
yeah,
That's just an internal complaint because you've
I guess
heard me
so.
rant, you've heard me go on. Hey, the crew needs hockey. The crew needs hockey. We've
Yeah.
got to take the next step. I know that's a small detail, but I did think that was a cool scene where they all hit Luffy to give him an extra boost into um, his attack.
Mhm.
Going forward, how did you feel about the Iron Giant and the information we got? A little bit of Joy Boy background. Letting down Joy Boy.
Mhm.
Um, Joy Boy storing the hockey inside the Iron Giant. How did you feel about some of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the story and the hockey thing, that's interesting.
A hockey bomb. It's like,
I have
it's
no
like
clue. Like a hockey bomb from the past that is like stored up. It's just like it's very odd for sure, but it's clearly powerful based off everybody's reaction.
so that's
And
he's got to be, he's got to be the greatest hockey user ever, correct?
yeah, you think so, right?
And the
You
fact that his hockey was able to change their transformations back to their humanoid form, and it was even able to get back to Emu that it was happening. I
right,
mean,
like
that's
so,
a massive deal, like in terms of power. So, you
yeah,
know, that's why
clearly
I was kind
levels
of
there's clearly levels that can still be reached, right? But
incredible.
I do think overall the Iron Giant stuff is cool, and it just kind of like gives us a hint into the whole Joy Boy stuff and like what exactly happened. Obviously, in Fishman Island, we saw the apology on the poneglyph,
Yep.
and then but now it just kind of seems like Joy Boy had a crew, and this crew let him down, and that's why Joy Boy wasn't the one who was able to like defeat the 20 kingdoms or whatever the 20 clans
Yes.
that came together. So
Correct.
Luffy's gonna have to be the one who gets the crew enough, strong enough, gets the allies, right? Mihawk said in Marineford, it's the most powerful ability in the series to gather strong allies. So it seems like that's gonna be the difference between Luffy and Joy Boy. Is
Yes.
Luffy probably even has a greater ability to draw allies and will draw the greatest of allies possible to take down the tyrannical government.
Now, do you think there's going to be more parallels between the Straw Hats and Joy Boy's crew? Because the Iron Giant to me is Frankie, correct? In
Yeah,
theory. Do you think we're going
yeah,
to
it
get
could
to
be.
see maybe more story like that?
Possible, yeah. I think for sure that the crew is going to be like they're D clan descendants, right?
Right.
So like Jaguar D Saw, maybe there was a giant on the Joy Boy crew too. Like
yeah, okay,
Trafalgar D Water Law, like descendant from there, right? I don't know if it'll be exact crew parallels. It seems like, there's a Zoro Ryuma parallel from that time period, but he doesn't really seem directly affiliated with Joy Boy. And then Luffy's obviously the Joy Boy parallel there. So it's possible, but I think it's more so going to be like a family thing, right? Like that's why
it's a group. It's more of a group,
Yeah.
The side that's fighting with Luffy is the parallel. I think that's fair. Yeah. Looking at it, this is a really good arc, and obviously, where do you want to go next from here? Because there's a lot more to get into. So where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, man. I mean, I just really like how it emphasized dreams and ambition. I thought it was just really well done. I liked pretty much all the character arcs. I think one thing we didn't mention too was Aokiji, because I know that was kind of going on the side, right? And how what Kizaru is going through now is kind of like what Aokiji went through before, and he eventually left the Marines. So I'm wondering if the Ohara moment with Aokiji, where he killed Saul, and then eventually left the Marines later. I'm wondering if Kizaru will do the same. Like, is this going to be the final straw for him? Because Kizaru was the only one who actually carried out his mission and didn't betray the government in this arc. He wavered, sure, but he carried out the mission. Now, what does that say for him going forward? I don't know, right? It's kind of like he's a cog in the machine, but he's wavering, just like Aokiji was.
That's a good point. That's a really good point, but to be fair, Aokiji also spent a lot more time after that with the government, and it wasn't until he lost to Kainu that he. So, do you think there's going to be more trials potentially for Kizaru that push him that direction? Because that would be interesting to me.
Possibly, yeah. Because I had two initial thoughts with Kizaru because of this character conflict. One is that he shows up in the final war as an antagonist, but this time he's not wavering. So it's like a full-out Kizaru. Like he finally decided, okay, I'm with the government. I'm with them to the end. I'm not wavering. There's nothing you can do about it. Or he just flat out betrays them and joins the side of the Straw Hats and isn't an in-game antagonist. So we'll see. Probably the latter, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think that's a fun one. That's interesting because, coming back around, let's talk Vegapunk's message. There's a lot to it, but we figure out that the world's flooding, like it had happened in the past. Then we get to, kind of looking ahead, we get to see Elbath. So there's a lot going on. What are your thoughts on that final message from Vegapunk? It was drawn out a little bit, probably longer than it needed to be, but that happened. That's classic One Piece. If we're talking about One Piece, you should expect things to be dragged out a little bit longer. 100%. Overall message, how'd you feel?
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool learning about that for sure. Obviously, we got blue ball at the end with some of the extra Joy Boy information, but I wouldn't expect anything less because we probably won't get that information till Raftel. But One Piece is very geographically based, like we've always talked about on the show. So that message kind of makes sense. It makes sense for what we have in store in Elbath and how that's going to relate. And yeah, just overall, I thought the conclusion was good for Vegapunk. I hope he doesn't come back. No.
Well, that's what I was like when the one version came with the crew. I was like, yeah, well, okay.
Still, yeah, right.
It's just we've done this. Me and you, we've said this many times. Some things it's okay to let them die. Like it's okay to lose things along the way to help build up your stakes later on. And I just feel like sometimes, we miss the mark. Like to me, Robin carrying on Saul's will and that kind of stuff. That was important at the time. That was really, that meant something to me. Do I like, when we're kind of, going Elbath, Egghead here a little bit at the end, but that meant something to me watching Robin cry and, having to set out on her own. That was her, but then you're like, damn, well, Robin got, 20 years of pain and she finally gets to see her, father figure, whatever, mentor, however you want to, call it. But, that felt nice for a minute, but at the same time, I'm like, God dang, man, there's a lot of other story going on here that we need some stakes. And I don't know. Sometimes we just miss on that. And I people can deny it and act like it doesn't matter. It does matter. It does. In a story, it matters. Let's, looking over it, we got a lot of cool, man. Obviously some things don't, they're not directly on the island of Egghead, but getting to see Garp fight, getting to see Aokiji fight, getting to see, some of the new powers from Blackbeard's crew, getting to see Law kind of clash with Blackbeard, also getting to see these other things, along with getting a pretty quality arc, top to bottom. If you had to rate this arc out of 10, where would you put Egghead?
So, 10s to me are like pretty damn flawless.
I think there's 110
probably
in One Piece.
In my opinion, yeah. I mean, some people might have different criteria. Some people might be a little more lenient, whatever. But I think Egghead is a solid like 8.5 to me, because I think it does what it's supposed to do. Almost perfectly. Like, it's not a perfect arc, but it just like, it's a nice change of pace. And part of my arc ratings are expectations too. Like, this to me was just a great, pleasant surprise that came out of nowhere that I wasn't expecting. And that's why I think that's part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much.
But so if you take away that expectation, I still think it's a quality arc, even though.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean, this is probably consistent wise one of the best arcs of the time skip.
I think it is the best, personally.
So so you're So
I think it's number 1.
8.5. So 8.5 for you is you. So you're probably I would go 9 for me.
Yeah.
And if you're going 8.5, that's probably fair. So I'm probably a little bit more lenient than you are. I know, as much as we've talked about these things, I understand that. So I'd go 9. I thought just the sheer amount of information we got was so great, and like I talked about as we were going through this review, the good character development we got to see from other people, getting to see how, these other clashes was all really good stuff for me, getting to see how Kiji go through a little bit of his backstory and the emotions of fighting his mentor, the guy he wanted to be when he was young. There's so much good stuff on top of getting to see, Zoro beat Lucci. It's just so much good stuff in there, and learning about Vegapunk, learning a little bit more. Yeah. So I'm going to go 9 out of 10. I think my only 10 out of 10 is probably Marineford.
I think I'm with you. Yeah.
And that's really hard to touch. And that's one of my favorite arcs that there's ever, in all of anime, manga, however you want to go. So, I would say it's a step a little bit below that, just because that's the peak of action that we've gotten to see in One Piece. So I think we're right in the same, I'm a little bit more lenient of a grader for sure.
We're in the same ballpark for sure.
100%.
It hits the mark. It brought back the joy and the depth of backstories.
Yeah.
Like backstory, like the main backstory of the arc, right? Thematically, it fits everything with One Piece, not only just like overarching themes of One Piece, but like the themes of Egghead and how that's going to translate into the final saga as a whole. So I think it's just a really good kickstart to this final saga.
And like you just said, this sets the table for Elbath. And obviously we'll talk about Elbath, when it comes to a close. But, we've been on a pretty good quality run here since Egghead. And, Wano had some high points. There was a lot of balls dropped in there, but I feel like we were setting up really well, like you just said. So the Egghead arc review, Shady, really enjoyed doing this with you. We're almost at the 40-minute mark. Again, man, always appreciate your knowledge, your everything you bring to the table when it comes to One Piece and everything in general. Appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to doing another episode next week. Any final thoughts before we get out of here today?
Well, don't like sports, ladies and gentlemen. Do not watch sports. Like, there's nothing good about it.
You set yourself up for pain.
Bro, I feel like the pop-off fruit just keeps increasing on me every time I watch a game of any kind, and I'm eventually gonna have to take like Zoro's pain. I wonder what my pop-off fruit, like I wonder what the attack would be if it was all my pain and suffering of sports. What do you think that would look like for me and you too? Because yours would be pretty high.
But you're like visualizing the word. Do you think as you put so in your pain, if you were taking your own pain, when you first put your hands in,
Yeah.
Do you think it's the flashback of 27-0? Do you think like that's the
Oh,
entry
no,
point?
That's not the entry point. No, the entry point is when Marlon McCree intercepts Tom Brady in 2006. That's when I started watching sports, and then he fumbles. Then he fumbles the interception. That I think kickstarts it for me. Then maybe the Robert Ory, a decade
I was gonna say,
into the crowd.
where does the hip check into the stands go for you?
That's up there. That's like, dude, yeah. And then it probably ends with like Drew Holiday stripping Devin Booker in the 27, and then the 27-0 Jags